I just finished season 1 of Lost. I'd seen bits and pieces of the show over the years, but I'd never actually sat down and watched a full episode. I already had a few things spoiled here and there. I knew that they were stuck on an island.
We need to split into two groups, the survivors and the others. Where's the manifest?
Oh, stop it with your Lost references. We need to get back home.
But other than that, I really didn't know anything about the show and didn't know much about who was in it. I knew that J.J. Abrams was one of the creators of the show, and I went into watching it with a little bit of a bias against J.J. Abrams at this point. One of the things that he does a lot in his films has been noted as unveiling mystery boxes. Ow! Which is a great tactic in writing. You want your audience asking a lot of questions that will hopefully be answered in the future. The problem comes when, at certain times, it seems like JJ came up with the questions without necessarily having an answer. The reason that a lot of people had faith in the trilogy when Force Awakens came out is because JJ had very effectively set up all these different mystery boxes. Where did Rey come from? What's going on with Luke? What happened to the lightsaber? Tons of questions that were ultimately either not answered or given a joke of an answer, or just kind of glossed over one way or another. So that was kind of what I went into this series thinking about. And if ever a project filled with mystery boxes that seem like there might not be a thought-through answer to solve, this is the one.
All I keep thinking is we're gonna crash on some tropical island and get attacked by a polar bear.
From the first episode, it's very clear that that kind of thing is happening in the writer's room. I'm sure some of this stuff was planned out, but there's definitely little hints of things in there that I'm positive they were just throwing spaghetti at the wall and trying to make it as intriguing as possible. Honestly, having watched the pilot, I wasn't all that impressed. I thought it was cool. There was definitely some very solid writing in it, and I could tell that it was a very... Jesus Christ. I could tell that it was a very 2000s style of television because... You know, this is pre-Breaking Bad. These were elevated stories, and we were starting to see series that were taking a lot bigger swings. So I believe that if I had watched Lost at the time, it would have affected me a lot more. But I watched the first couple of episodes, and I remember thinking, I don't really care about any of these characters. You know, I didn't feel a particular attachment to any one of them. Certainly not Matthew Fox. And, you know, as a huge Lord of the Rings fan, Dominic Monaghan was a welcome sight. I had no idea he was in this. I thought it was completely insane that the show was implying that people were recognizing this guy as the bassist of a band that put out one album, I think it was. And there was just moments like that throughout those first couple episodes that I just didn't have faith that this series was going to continue in a trajectory that I would be interested enough to continue it. Well, cut to 4 days later, I have finished Season 1. Why did I finish Season 1? Is it because something was happening on the island that I was so fascinated by that I needed to get answers? A little bit later, yes. But the reason that I pushed through those first few episodes, I started to become a lot more interested in the backstories of these characters. That is what sold this show for me. The episodic structure of having each episode revolve around one particular character and then intercutting that with their backstory is very smart. As each one was revealed, I began to like each of these characters a little bit more. Michael and Walt's backstory is really interesting, and the way that they play it out where, you know, at first you just think it's a father and son, and then you think that it's an estranged father and son and maybe a deadbeat father. And then you see the full story and you understand Michael a lot more. The whole side plot with Walt deciding to burn the raft because he doesn't want to move anymore was a really smart twist. At the time, it seemed like the person who burned it was probably John Locke, who is by far my favorite character on the show. When I would see little clips of the series when it was first airing, this guy always seemed like a villain to me. So when I watched the first few episodes, I was just waiting for his villainy to show up. And sure enough, they do a lot with his character to kind of make it seem like he may be an antagonist. But once you go into his backstory, that's when you get this real big twist that this guy isn't at all what he seems. He's not at all what he claims to be. And it's kind of a sad and depressing backstory about this guy who's kind of a loser, who's not respected. He's, in love with a call girl that doesn't want to go on a trip to Australia with him. And we soon find out that he is actually paralyzed below the waist. And that is the moment that really sold me on the show. When they show us the early scene again of the plane crash and the aftermath of all the debris around the island, and we see John Locke, what's the first thing he does? He looks at his feet, he starts wiggling his big toe.
Wiggle your big toe.
They do a really good job with his character, just kind of going back and forth. There's never a moment when you fully trust him, and there's never a moment when you fully don't trust him. You feel like this guy is probably their only chance at getting off the island. He's the only one that's able to get them any bore at the beginning until he gets completely distracted by a mysterious hatch. And it's at that point in the story... that the plot on the island becomes a lot more interesting. The Others. This is something that I only knew of from that one episode of The Office where Dwight references the Others when they first go down to the warehouse.
Remember on Lost, when they met the Others?
That is all I knew of the Others. And at this point, that's still pretty much all I know of them because we haven't seen them, other than the French lady and what's-his-face, who Dominic ended up killing. We haven't seen anyone else on the island yet. Getting back to character backstories, Evangeline Lilly, who, my God, she's really good in the show. I like how they played around with the mystery of who was the criminal passenger and her whole backstory of outrunning the law and her little love story history and getting the guy killed, and all of that is very interesting. I feel like there's definitely more to that story that we're going to want to uncover in the future, but I enjoyed that whole backstory. I love John Locke's backstory. I love Hurley. Hurley's got a really interesting backstory. That one came a little bit later, but, he's kind of living this boring life, stuck at home with his family. Suddenly he wins the Mega Million lottery, and everything that could possibly go wrong begins to go wrong in his life. His grandfather dies immediately. His grandmother breaks her ankle. House burns down that he bought for her. And he winds up just making it on the flight to the island. Hurley is a very impressive character. To be able to get stuck on an island for that long and not lose any weight is a testament to the human spirit. And I really like the story with the numbers that he used for his lotto ticket that he got from this guy who seems to be completely nuts. Where are you going? Where are you going? Stop it. And the idea of him just thinking that he's unlucky and this is all his fault, that is kind of proven to him once he finds the hatch. I believe that was the last episode of the first season. He sees the hatch and he sees the numbers written out on the hatch. And by the end of the final episode, they finally blow open the hatch and tease that we might be going down there in season 2. So I'm definitely excited for that. And then the other thing that I'm very excited about is finding out what the hell is going on with the guys who kidnapped Walt. Michael and Sawyer and Jin, played by Daniel Day Kim, are going off to sea in the raft that they've been building, the second raft. My whole thought process is, what is going to happen to this raft? I'm wondering, they're not going to kill off these characters. I don't think they're going to kill Michael. I'm sure they're not going to kill Walt. I'm positive they're not going to kill Sawyer. And I don't think they're going to kill Jin either. And as they're sailing away, at first I thought what would happen is that they would see land, only to find out that they're back at the island again. That would have been cool. This is obviously a lot more interesting. It leaves a lot more questions to be answered in the future. Okay, let's talk polar bears. What the hell is going on with that? One of the first episodes, something comes running at them from the woods. I was very concerned that it was going to be the dog that was about to get shot. But it turns out it is a very, very bad animatronic puppet of a polar bear. Yeah, I don't know that you can take down a polar bear with a handgun like that. Probably not. Probably not would be my guess. And then it's mentioned kind of in passing as a joke, but no one even discusses the fact that there's a polar bear on this tropical island. And then the second thing is that before they're able to find Boar, they're worried about food, and it never occurred to anybody to go grab that polar bear and cook it and eat it. You know? Wouldn't that have been smart? Sawyer, another great character. Really like Sawyer's character. That's another guy that at first you think, this guy sucks. Let's kill him off to get him out of the way. And then suddenly he's one of the most interesting characters. His backstory is really clever. A little confusing, but I liked the twist where you think that he caused this murder-suicide, only to find out a little later that it was actually his parents. He was the one who witnessed it. And then once we actually go to that backstory in a later episode and we see that he's hiding under the bed while his father kills his mother and then blows his brains out right on top of him, you start to understand his character even more. Saeed, another really interesting character. I like Saeed a lot. I especially liked when Saeed went off on his own. I felt that that was a really interesting plot. They brought him back really quickly, which, it is what it is. But I thought that was interesting, and that was a cool way to kind of meld that story with whatever is going on with this French woman, finding out this woman's been alive there for, I think it was like 16 years. The smoke monster stuff, all the stuff with these giant lumbering monsters that they just refuse to show us for an entire season. I don't know, man. I mean, hopefully that ends up paying off, and I like what they do with that, but at this point it's just like, I don't know, man. And again, the second polar bear they showed that's like trying to break through the trees, it just looks so phony. It's really just, it just comes down to the practical effects they use that I just wasn't a fan of, and more importantly, polar bears are just one of the most fearsome, terrifying, monstrous creatures on this planet. So seeing these people get the best of them twice in such a lazy way just didn't really work for me. Polar bear is probably number one most terrifying animal on this planet to come into contact with as a human being. So I just felt like, let it eat somebody, let it kill somebody, something. We're more worried about the boars coming into these people's camps than the most dangerous animal on the planet. So I don't know, whatever. I like Claire and Charlie a lot. Charlie's backstory was interesting. Him having to kick heroin. Charlie having to kick heroin was an interesting little add-on. I think that's a really cool idea, to have a character who gets marooned on an island and is forced to kick their drug habit. It's good from a character standpoint that they let him make the decision himself, but I had a couple issues with that. One is that, you're kind of losing the interesting aspect of the fact that this is a person who is forced into sobriety by being stuck on an island. And then the other side of it is just that I just do not for 1 second believe that he was able to get through heroin withdrawals in one day. He asks Locke for the heroin back only twice before deciding to burn it, all within the span of less than 24 hours. So I don't know much about heroin. I've never done it, but I do believe that it is a little harder to kick than that. Of course, later in the show, there's a plane that is found. It ends up being the death of another character who we'll talk about in a second. I'm curious to see what happens with that. I don't particularly want to see Charlie get back on heroin again. I understand what they're doing, but I would rather see some new challenges given to him. I don't really want to rehash, no pun intended, any of that. Shannon and Boone. What a weird one. Yeah, I don't know. That was weird. I didn't love that. Interesting, yes, but just, I don't know, just reeks of nerdy writer getting out his sexual fantasies on paper. Yeah, I'm not one of the people that believes that sex should not be in movies and television. I am one of the people that believes that it should not involve relatives. Jin and Sun, another interesting couple on the island. Their backstory is cool. Again, I like the way that they slowly reveal backstories to make you start to dislike a character a little more, and then you find out the reason behind why they did what they did, and suddenly you understand them in a way you hadn't earlier on. I believe I caught something. And I'll have to go back and watch again just to make sure, but correct me if I'm wrong here, okay? Daniel Dae Kim, obviously he's an American actor. I don't think that he's fluent in Korean. But he's playing a character who is completely fluent in Korean and doesn't understand English. So to Korean speakers, I'm sure that his accent and his dialect and the way that he's speaking seems very fake. Now, Sun, on the other hand, is a Korean actress. She speaks fluent Korean, and I think that she helped him a lot with his dialogue. But there's a moment in the first few episodes where it's revealed that Sun secretly knows and speaks English, something she's hiding from her husband, for reasons. One thing I noticed, I believe, is that in that episode, when she's revealed to speak English, she seems to speak perfect English with a somewhat American accent, if I'm not mistaken. Because it feels like that's part of what's so jarring, is that not only does she speak English, she speaks it flawlessly with relatively no accent. But then, maybe 10 episodes later, we bring that plot point back, and she's speaking English again. But this time, she has a thick Korean accent, bordering on offensive. And it was so jarring, because I binged this, so I saw all these episodes within a couple of days. It was so jarring to me that she suddenly had this accent that I don't think she had before, and it made me wonder, was there a different director that day, and they just went with a different accent? Did they forget the accent she used the first time and came back to it? I don't know. Very, very odd. But, you know, overall, I've enjoyed the show. I like all the cast. I'm very curious now to see what happens with the Raft story and the Hatch story. Overall, I want to know a lot more about John Locke and see what happens with him, because I find him absolutely fascinating. The actor Terry O'Quinn, who plays John Locke, does an absolutely brilliant job in the show. I'm surprised I haven't seen him in more. Unless he's Michael Chiklis, and I just didn't realize that was the same person all this time. Really cool show. Overall, I'm a fan now. I will definitely be at least checking out the second season. But let me know if you think I should finish the series and talk about the next seasons. And tell me in the comments if there's any other series that you think I should check out, and I'll let you know if I've seen them already or not. If you want to see more content like this, you can check out some of these other videos I have on the channel, and subscribe for more. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. I'm Zach. This is Outlaw, and you're watching Zach Makes Movies.